Come with me to cover Penn State's final away game of the regular season against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So, Minnesota is pretty far from State College. It's about 17 hours drive to be exact. So we left pretty early, got up around 5 a.m., left around 5:30. It was snowing when we left. And we hit the road, and by the time we made it to about the border between Pennsylvania and Ohio, the snow had turned from snow to rain. We stopped at a gas station to pick up some snacks and then made our way across a couple of state lines, first Indiana and then into Michigan, where we stopped at a Culver's to grab a bite to eat. This was Aiden's first time at a Culver's, but this was a staple for us, and since we thought this could be our last Midwestern road trip, we stopped, but now we learned that we're going to the Big Ten Championship in Indianapolis, which is pretty exciting, but kept driving through a couple more states, Illinois, Wisconsin. We stopped at a gas station in Wisconsin, and this is when we reached the point of delirium for this trip.
I've seen you in blue and I've seen you in yellow, but only you red. This time, 'cause you are the Adams, Costello.
From there, we drove through Wisconsin Dells, which is a tourism capital, and then made our way into Minnesota. This is the 37th state I've ever been to. Pretty exciting. The North Star State, I think is what they call it. We were staying at a Quality Inn outside Minneapolis. We brought some of our New Glarus beer, which is only sold in Wisconsin. We brought it from our gas station in Wisconsin and toasted to what we thought was our final road trip of the year. Beer's, pretty solid. It's a decent ale. And then we went over to the Well, I think it was called, which was a bar literally in the parking lot of our hotel. So super convenient. We hadn't eaten since the Culver's, which was hours and hours earlier. So we were all pretty hungry, wanted to get a bite to eat, watched the Minnesota 6A High School State Championship, and then went to bed. Saturday was game day in Minnesota, so we started our day right with a breakfast at the International House of Pancakes before making our way into Minneapolis. The University of Minnesota is pretty much in the city of Minneapolis. It's kind of a separate area of the city, but it is technically, I think, in the city. We drove on to campus, and we had a little bit of time before we needed to go into the stadium to walk around and see what campus looked like. So we did some exploring, saw their main lawn area, and saw that from campus you could see the city, like the downtown, including US Bank Stadium, which is where the Vikings play, and I might add where the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017. Then we made our way to the gift shop. I get a pin at every every school that we go to, so I had to grab a pin, admired their hockey jerseys and cool Gopher mugs before generally making our way down to the Minnesota River. It's the Mississippi River. This is the first time in my life I've seen the Mississippi. It spans all the way from the Gulf Coast all the way up here into Minnesota, which is a northern state, which is pretty cool. We then walked over to Huntington Bank Stadium, where the University of Minnesota plays. Made our way into the stadium. I went up top to get some shots of the bowl view with the entire stadium. The stand saying Minnesota with the M is pretty cool. And then we went outside to get ready for Penn State team arrival, which from there is pretty much the start of all the activities until the end of the game. I'm pretty much working from then on out. We saw, I think his name is Goldie, the Gopher, the Golden Gopher. Pretty funny mascot. I've seen a lot of mascots. He's one of the better ones I've seen. And then Penn State arrived on their team buses, and from there it was time to work. I didn't have a lot of clips from this point. I did want to show, though, that this is the walk from the media room to the field. It's probably the longest walk from a media room to the field I've ever had, so I had to sped it up 10 times speed to show. It took me 2 minutes. It was really inconvenient. I appreciate Minnesota's hospitality, but I did think that was interesting. Anyway, I'll now show you some of the pre-game festivities and stuff. It was super cool. They had a flyover and everything. there, the game got going. As usual, I don't have really clips from during the game, mainly focused on taking pictures and everything. But Minnesota, I gotta give it to them. It was a good atmosphere. Not the biggest stadium I've ever been to, but the band was always bumping. The fans were into the game. It was a close game. It ended up being a 1-point win for Penn State. They barely squeaked out of there with the governor's victory bell, which you can see them celebrating with here. But close game. The atmosphere was rocking the entire time. After the game, I of course shot the team celebration after the close win. Before checking in with Aiden for the first time since we saw each other really at halftime, here's his thoughts on the game.
First game thoughts,
I'm having heart palpitations, but I'm okay.
Yeah, because we're unbiased journalists.
Yep.
After the game, as per usual, I went back to the media room. This time I listened to Minnesota coach PJ Fleck's post-game press conference. Usually I listen to Franklin's, but based on where I was set up in the media room, I listened to Fleck's. And then here are some of the pictures that I edited. I had a decent game. I didn't love a lot of my pictures. The shifting from day to night in the middle of the game always kind of throws me off, I feel like, for whatever reason. But I thought I did okay. I thought my pictures turned out alright. And it was definitely an exciting game. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. Penn State's fake punt towards the end of the game was one of the craziest plays I have ever seen in person. But pretty much as soon as the game was over, after we edited our pictures, we went up to the media level where the writers were doing their work before getting our stuff together and heading to the very convenient Buffalo Wild Wings, which was located right across the street from the stadium. Honestly, awesome setup. We were all starving at this point, so having access to food that close was great. But from there, we pretty much just made our way back to the hotel to get a good night's rest. Sunday was actually not the last day because we decided to break up our travels home over the course of 2 days. I mean, again, 16 hours is a long way, but because of that extra time, we had a little bit of time for a fun stop, so we made our way into Wisconsin, stopping in the town of Chippewa Falls, which is the home of Leinenkugel's Brewery, one of my favorite breweries, known primarily for their summer shandy, but they have a bunch of really good stuff. And we decided to stop for a little brewery tour. We started first at the Leinie Lodge, which is their gift shop / bar area. It's not an actual lodge, like you can't sleep there, but it does have that lodge feel inside. Pretty much all the Leinenkugel's merchandise that you could ever imagine. It was decorated for Christmas, which just gave it even more of that super homey lodge vibe. Inside, the place was decked out in, neon signs and plaques and full of little tidbits of Leinenkugel's Brewery's history. So we started by doing some shopping. I picked up a t-shirt and a pin from there as well. And then we got some beer. We were doing a tour, which I'll get to in a little bit, but as part of the tour, you got a couple samplers of beer. So you're able to try different beers. No pressure. They're just little 5-ounce samples. So if you don't like it, it's not a big deal. And they have a number of beers actually on draft here that they only make and sell at this location. You can't get it anywhere else. It's part of their Scratch Brewery, which is actually in the back of the lodge here. So I got an apple spice beer that was delicious. I got a summer shandy, of course. That was the full pint that you saw. I had to get a summer shandy at the home of summer shandy. And a blueberry wheat beer and a stout, a couple other ones. Everything was really good. The apple spice one was definitely my favorite. Kind of bummed that I'm never going to be able to have that one again. But from there, we made our way over to the factory for our hour-long tour. This is a small factory. They brew a lot of their stuff at other locations. But sadly, they recently got bought out by Molson Coors, obviously, who owns Coors and a bunch of other smaller breweries. And this factory will be closing soon, which was super sad. I'm glad we were able to go and see the original factory and the original Leinenkugel's brewery process, founded by Jacob Leinenkugel, who is from Germany, and this has been where the brewery was since the company has existed, and I think it was the 1800s. Long history, and I'm glad I got to see it before it closed, but it was a bummer to find out that they would be closing because they were bought out by a larger brewing company. But after the tour, we made our way back to the lodge because as part of the tour, we got one more free sample. I cashed mine in on one more of those apple spice ones before we generally got our things together and headed back on the road. Stopping at Leinenkugel's was awesome. They had a bunch of really good beer, but everyone was just super nice. You could see the kind of family aspect of the brewery still intact. It's a shame that they did get bought out and that they're closing. Hopefully a lot of their good beer survives the acquisition and they don't lose a lot of those recipes. But from there we hit the road, made our way into Illinois, stopped at a Chipotle for dinner. I got my usual burrito bowl order before driving through Chicago. This was probably the last interesting thing we would see on the entire drive for pretty much until we were back at State College. Drove past the White Sox Stadium before then making our way into Indiana and then Ohio, where we would stop at a Days Inn for the night. Monday was the last day of travel, and we got up before the sun did, pretty much just making our way back all the way to State College, other than one brief stop at a Chick-fil-A to grab some breakfast. But from there, we just made our way back to State College, and that was it. We will see you guys in Indianapolis.